Hi everyone. Thank you so much for joining me today to have a candid discussion about AI and equity and blackness and visibility, representation, all of the above. I'm really excited to learn more about your work, but before we get into it, can you each introduce yourselves and what you do for those who aren't familiar?
Awesome. I'll go ahead and start. My name is Karen Okonkwo, and I'm one of the co-founders of TONL, which is a diverse stock photography and now custom generative AI platform. And my background is more so on the business development, marketing, and just general daily operations aspect of TONL.
Awesome. And I'm Joshua Kissi, based in LA, photographer, director, and handling all the things creative for Tonal.
And I'm Abran Maldonado. I'm the co-founder of Create Labs. We are a generative AI company creating inclusive and diverse AI tools.
Amazing. It's lovely to meet you all. And so I guess, yeah, let's get into it. I think the burning question for me is like, what is it that happened that made you think this is a problem? Because I know I'm an entrepreneur myself. I often say entrepreneurship starts with a complaint. So what inspired this partnership, this collaboration, and this particular product?
Well, I'll give some background. I think there's maybe some pretext to where we actually first met. So we specialize in creating generative AI solutions for things that we want to see in the market. Clients will come to us and ask us to build things on their behalf. Startups will come to us and say, "Hey, can you build my AI product?" And then I'll go raise money on it. And we've been successful in all three of those phases. And we were building MasterCard's small business AI product where they wanted a small business AI coach and mentor. So Create Labs has had a long-standing partnership with MasterCard on all things generative AI. And they knew that I was a speaker traveling the world doing like AI keynotes, talking to the community about, AI. And which event was it, Karen, that you attended that I spoke at?
It was
What was
actually
the
through Hello
theme?
Alice. Hello Alice
Yes.
was doing me.
So Hello Alice is a partner of MasterCard, and Hello Alice asked me to do like an AI 101 and show them what's possible with small business. And Karen was in the audience and had reached out, and then the partnership kind of just built from there, where we got really into the nuts and bolts of it after that.
Yeah, and just to kick it off and share kind of the point of view that I was coming from is for us, I really always like to look out for people where there's synergy. And I really was impressed with Abron and how much he cared about just the diversity, equity, and inclusion space. And I really did not know exactly how we could work together, but I knew that there could be something there. And when we spoke, we just talked about the issues that we were experiencing within our market, one of which was the fact that a lot of our clientele were sharing that they did not have the money right now to really pay for big custom photo shoots like they used to in the past. Second to that, we also were noticing in the AI space, we were not impressed with the quality of images that we were seeing. And we were lamenting and we were saying, we really like the quality of our images. And then Abron said, well, if you like the quality of your own images, why don't you just train a model using your own images? And that was where the idea sparked from Abron for us to work together in that capacity since he was already developing empowered AI.
Yeah, and I think prior to our partnership with Abron and Empowered, Tonal would start to kind of be a creative solution to the marketplace when it comes to stock photography. So us starting was always around the idea of collaboration, community, equity, and being able to work with the right partners to kind of bring these ideas to life. So separately, our platform and catalog was just always highlighted all types of life, all around the world. So this felt like the perfect kind of collaboration and partnership with Empowered and a bronze to kind of bring to life.
Amazing. Honestly, I'm kind of like burning. I want to see what this tool looks like. Can we get a sneak peek demo, please?
Yeah, Bron has the toolkit.
So the interface on the tonal side, we're still going to debut, but this is a snapshot of some of the images coming through the system.
Wow.
of tone.
Oh my
And
goodness.
you see that nothing in here. So as a struggling, you know, image generator and what they call prompt engineer, right? I'm a prompt engineer. Anytime you use those default systems, those mainstream, what they call foundational systems, you always have to work extra hard to get representation out of them. And you have to use, weird taxonomies around like ethnicities and descriptors, right? Sometimes I can't even just say the word black. I'll get flagged. I have to say like African or Dominican if I want something that's like a certain representation, a certain complexion. Where this system, you just have to say the the situation that you want, like a picnic or kids or people playing at the beach or protest, and it will create the diverse. It's the aesthetic is the exact style and aesthetic that's being pulled through from the tonal library of 14,000 plus images into these systems. So you don't have to worry about the representation. It's going to happen by default in the system.
That's amazing. So I could just like open up this platform and type in um create an image of a family of, I don't know,
Yeah,
black.
this picture right here, I
Yeah.
literally just typed the word family portrait. See, I wrote family portrait. That was it. I
Oh,
didn't say biracial, mixed race, family. I just said family portrait, and that's what I got.
wow. That's amazing. This is incredible. And I think, yeah, this is one of those things that bring to the forefront of my mind just how much this was missing because it hadn't
Yeah.
even occurred to me to think about how I struggled to find images. And I know even with just stock images, period, we've started getting more of them now, like on Unsplash and places like that, that reflect us. But
hmm
yeah, like for a long time, stock images would just look a certain way, very, very
This
white.
one I just typed smiling man. That's all I put for this one.
Man, I
Where
love
in any other system by default, you'll get, a white blonde man if you put smiling man.
yes.
So I did this study with Washington Post. So Natasha Tiku reached out from the Washington Post, and she was like, "I know you work really hard on representation in image prompting. You want to be part of this study with me?" And I said, "Sure." And they prompted beauty in these systems across all of the systems, and only women of color came up 9% of the time.
Mm.
9%. So we were already doing the work prior to that story, but I knew after that story that we had the industry research that we needed to know that this was needed.
Yeah. And I think one of the words that you mentioned there just brought to mind the wider and underlying issue, which said the word default. And I
Mm.
think a lot of people's concept of white supremacy is, KKK, white hoods, that kind of thing. But no, white supremacy is also what you think is the standard of a man or a woman, And so the fact that we've now been able to, or you have now enabled us to see ourselves as a default, I think that's really powerful and quite revolutionary. And
It
so,
kind of adds to the narrative and the layer of reference for people when they think default. Instead of thinking white, now they could think default and just for it to just be diverse. It could be anybody. Somebody living in Asia, somebody living in India, somebody living in Nigeria, somebody, wherever. So I think like a lot of relearning and reconditioning needs to happen. But you also need all partners from creatives to corporate companies to be able to hold hands around the new definition of what that needs to look like. Obviously, like we live in a country where they're fighting education and peeling back those same references. So, there's parallel work that needs to happen for all of this to be truly effective.
absolutely, absolutely. And so, with that said, I just wanted to zoom out a little bit to the wider conversation about AI and how that's shaping the future of storytelling. What do you think about the concept of digital erasure and where do you see the products that you guys have created essentially preventing that for Black and Brown people?
And so when you say, where do we see digital erasure? I mean, at this point, right now, what we're doing is we are enabling and allowing our presence to be seen in the digital space where otherwise, as we've heard over and over again, our data sets are widely not included when you look at the ratio of data sets. They're just simply not the majority. And so we are in and of itself adding it goes from the thousands that are kind of lost in the data set to now the ability to create millions. And so that's to me how we are allowing ourselves to not be erased in this digital landscape, which otherwise would be, because again, the trajectory is that we were otherwise on the trajectory of not being included.
No, absolutely. And I think I can definitely see the importance of what it is you're building right now in preserving and amplifying Black and Brown history. So, yeah, it's really powerful what you guys are doing. And now I'm curious to hear your thoughts about how AI can be a double-edged sword. And so, while it can uplift and represent us, create visibility for us, there is also historically a tendency for it to reinforce harmful stereotypes. And so, how are you navigating this tension with your work?
By doing it ourselves. I mean, when I travel to different countries, I'm doing, the AI week of Milan keynote, and I was just in Qatar. So when I'm in other countries, they understand, like, I tell them, why would you let Silicon Valley dictate how you're represented in these language models, right? Shouldn't Italy control its own models to represent Italian history and culture and education? So same with us, right? Like, why would we sit on the sidelines and just keep our fingers crossed, hoping that they represent us in the right way, rather than just taking the steering wheel ourselves and doing it ourselves, and comparing how we did it to how they did it. And that way, we actually have a benchmark of like how it's done when we do it ourselves versus how they do it as an observer of our culture. Um, but to not participate just because you want to hold on to an old way, it, that's you could try that, but I mean, where the tide is moving forward regardless. It's either you participate or you're gonna get left behind.
Facts. And I love that, just the way you put it, like we're doing it ourselves. And I think that deserves like a huge period because, you know, the problems that we have arrived at with creating the need for this solution is just the fact that we've been the concept of co-production, nothing about us without us, and essentially so many products and services have been designed without us in mind. And so I love how you guys are reclaiming this space for yourselves.
Yeah, I think for me, like from a practical standpoint, being a creative, being a storyteller, like there's that sense of a lot of people have a fear of the models and what it's able to do. And I think it's just embracing the tension and conversation collectively as a community, I think helps to inform like how we can move together in the right way. But it's similar to when things went from film to digital, from digital to like there's always a push to people to kind of resist. And now if you want to film something on film or photograph something in film, it's a premium price. And that may happen to real images where it's like if you want real images with real people, like that's going to cost a certain amount just because everything that comes with it. So I think like the market is going to continue to shift in that way, but things will continue to, I mean, in films now on Netflix film, there are AI generated scenes that weren't even in films that they're testing out, getting people comfortable with. And I think it's a matter of time until the whole film may be all AI generated. You know what I mean? So it's just one of those things where it's like, yeah, it's a swing to the market. Yes, there's some I guess tension around authenticity and what you're saying in the previous question as far as digital erasure. Like if you went to Google Images and all you saw were AI generated images, is that a bad thing? Is that a good thing? So it's like just depends on who you ask. But I think this thing is already billions and billions of dollars invested into. And now all these different models and all these different approaches are just getting people more and more either comfortable or uncomfortable with what the reality is. So I don't think it's going to always just be like this tense of a conversation, but I think in the early beginnings of anything, it's going to be uncomfortable for sure.
No, definitely. And so many thoughts are going through my mind. But the first thing is that I think earlier in my inbox, I think I saw an article that was talking about Blockbuster, and I was like, wow, what a
Yeah,
throwback.
yeah. We love Blockbuster. We used to pull up there, have the whole experience until Netflix came around, and you're like, actually, I don't need to go outside to the
Yeah,
corner or rent the movie. Now I can just do it from the ease of my house. And even
exactly.
when Netflix made you send back the movies, that was a whole other thing. We had to send it back to them after watching it. So
Yeah.
things continue to evolve.
No, absolutely. But one thing you've just brought up that I'm now curious about is, this concept of the entire film being AI generated. And it reminded me of, I believe it was some type of modeling campaign that was controversial because it used an AI generated, I think it was a black model, and
Yeah,
Mhm.
outcry because it's like, why couldn't you just pay a black model to do that?
yeah,
So the socio-economic consequences of this kind of digital visibility, because to me, I'm just thinking about like the concept of there not being actors anymore because they've all been replaced by AI characters. Like that's so wild to me.
yeah.
I'm curious about your
That's
thoughts.
true. I mean, my personal feeling is like as long as we're at the center and bridge of how these models come to life, like the humanity touch of it, I think is important. So when I was working on that Google commercial in London, for example, they were really passionate about like, hey, like we don't want to put in the story that AI is here to replace anything. Like we really want humanity to still be at the center, and we use this as a bridge instead. So like you can tell all their teams were really passionate about making sure that's the message where it's like, hey, we're not here to replace friendships, love, the emotions that we feel as human beings. Like, we don't want to replace that. What we do want to have is a co-guide or co-pilot to like some of these things in your daily life. So I was like, okay, like that makes sense. So it does seem like there's a corporate responsibility, but then there's also a creative responsibility on like how these things manifest in our life. So
And those contracts will change like over time.
yeah,
Now that the creative community is going to get hip to it, they're going to be like, okay, well, this works for me because I can be at two shoots at once. I could be at 10 shoots at once if we do my scan, but give me an upfront for every shoot, whether I'm physically there or not. Give me prior approval, give me points on the back end. Like you're gonna start to get, a lot of these because especially in Hollywood, like I could pay you $300 and scan you once and then use you as an extra in like 100 movies and pay you like $300 for one time of a scan, and then you're a work for hire. That's a bad legal situation. That's not an AI situation, right? You need better representation. It's like for every movie you're going to use me as an extra. Great, I can get more work now because you have my scan, but I need to get the same deal on each of those placements. So you're going to see more savvy deals happen to represent the creatives if they're smart.
Wow. I don't think it properly dawned on me the extent to which everything is changing right now.
but yeah,
Um, yeah, I'm
Like
so,
now, this is not like future. This is
yeah.
this
This is
is
not
now.
future. It's like right now. It's happening for
Yep.
sure.
so
Yep.
wild to me, like the thought of earning residuals on something that someone's just taking your photo and yeah, that's it's wild, but it's happening. It's happening. In the topic of authentic representation, how do you feel that AI generated visuals can or do influence psychological safety in professional and social spaces? Like, media representation is known to have an effect on people's mental health or their self-esteem. Where do you see AI's place in that? And then specifically also, how do you see the tonal generator contributing to the positive self-images of Black and brown people?
Yeah, well, I can speak to this. I did a TEDx here in Seattle about the importance of seeing yourself in imagery and what it was like to grow up in seeing media in a predominantly white space and what it does to you subconsciously, and how you move and how you see people that look like you doing things that you otherwise did not know that you can do, how that influences you. And it's the exact same thing in the generative AI space. There are things that now you can imagine that you see people that look like you doing that can expand your belief in yourself. I think there's going to be a lot of people just doing more and believing in themselves more, improving their self-esteem because there's really no limitations. And so that is what I hope will come from people being experimental with the generative AI tool. Of course, within reason, of course, we want to be mindful of the planet, but I definitely think that people are going to receive higher self-esteem from being able to see themselves in the generative AI space, for sure.
Amazing. And I'm curious about wider integration. Like, are there any plans for you to integrate this technology into education, healthcare, the corporate space, to create this kind of inclusive representation across sectors?
So I want to clarify, like on the product side, and I mentioned this last time that we're like building in public because this is a concept and a partnership that has taken off right before our very eyes, and we're showing the community how this actually works because this is a joint venture between Create Labs and Tonal, and uh, and within Create Labs we have a team called Empowered that works on our like inclusive and diverse AI products, and there's going to be an Empowered chatbot that is trained by nonprofits to make sure that when you talk to it, it is giving you the resources that you might not get from like a ChatGPT. And the image generator is powered by Tonal. But Tonal is going to be its own standalone image generator product. Tonal AI will be its own thing that has a long, unending roadmap to that product, whether it's not just image, it will be video, it will be like world building. Like there's so much that you can do now with these tools that you can have people in London, in Africa, in on the West Coast, in Compton, just like wanting to tell their own stories, create their own narratives, create their own movies, short films through the tonal tool and create those visuals and those storyboards and even the videos themselves within tonal. So they don't really have to go to any other tool to bring their vision to life, which is very exciting, right? We call it AI Christmas, where like every 3 months there's a new AI tool, a new toy that we get to play with, grab that API and superpower our products with it, and see how it changes the roadmap of what we built.
This is again, I feel like a kid in a toy store. Like this is also exciting and thought-provoking. I'm curious to hear a bit more about the kind of opportunities that it can create, especially for Black and Brown business owners or entrepreneurs. Like what do you think um these communities can do with this tool in their line of business?
I'll share one way. I think for creatives, it's a great way to use it just for concepting. If you want to just present a brief, maybe to a client, of course, it's not to copy it verbatim, but just to concept and say, hey, here's a way and a manner in which we can do a creative piece of work. This is a great way for you to conceptualize it. So that's one way that you could use the tool.
Amazing. And another question about just the ethics around this. I'm curious to hear your thoughts about the role of policymakers and institutions in ensuring that as AI expands and progresses, that it promotes rather than hinders social mobility and reinforcing the inequalities we already have in our societies.
So just asking what we're expecting of our government when it comes to their regulations on AI.
Yeah.
We kind of stepped back a bit because there was going to be a lot of regulation coming.
Yeah.
All that got rolled back when Homeboy came into office, right? So now we have like 4 years of just like Wild West all over again, of just unregulated innovation for better or for worse. And we have to be responsible ourselves with what we do with that freedom, that power, that, liberty to just like build without any checks or balances. We got to check ourselves, basically, So and just be ready that, if things were to shift 4 years from now, to be ready because there will be more responsible, committees on the ethics and the boards and probably emulating and mirroring what's happening in the EU, with GDPR and the advances that they've made overseas when it comes to AI regulation.
Hmm. I just had a thought in my mind about what it could potentially be called, like, I don't know, GPTR or something. I don't know. That's me being corny. Um, but the last couple of questions I'm curious about is just general stuff. What do you think are the overall opportunities and then also the risks that, Black students, professionals, and entrepreneurs should be aware of?
Things to be aware of when it comes to generative AI, maybe just from more of a licensing perspective. And this is, we're continuing to educate ourselves too when it comes to AI, is that um, generative AI in and of itself doesn't allow agencies to own the copyrights to what they're generating. And so that is something that can be considered a bottleneck for agencies because there is no ability to necessarily own an image. And us as a company, we don't tend to pass copyright anyway. But that can be something that might be a hindrance for certain types of creative communities that are looking to own rights, in the sense that really you're just coming to buy, you're buying the ability to use a tool. You're not buying a license because there is no copyright. And when it comes to generative AI, as opposed to stock photography, yes, you are buying a license to an image because copyright can be owned by a human. In this case, that is us as a business. And so that is a lesson or something that's important for users to understand in this space. So that's something important for people to know.
Yeah, I would also say that this wasn't built on what they call the foundational models of like OpenAI or Google or Anthropic. Where if it was, and who knows, in the future, if we really like their video model, we might, use their API. But right now, this is all built free and independent open source. So, we can set our own terms around commercialization, should we decide to, where we don't have to adhere to like OpenAI's policies or Google's policies on what they deem is allowed on the images generated on their tech stack. So not to get too technical, but this is done with open source technologies, which is why I tell people like there's free stuff out there to build these type of technologies to represent you in whatever way you deem appropriate to represent accurately and authentically your culture and community. Go and build it. There's nothing holding you back. We built this ourselves with no problem.
I'm just thinking about the days of MySpace. I used to program those layouts so easily. Maybe if I
Yeah.
continued, I'd be like you guys, but I'm not. So I'll just leave it to you. But I love the work that you're doing. It's very, very powerful and important. And I guess as a closing question, what key takeaway or key message do you want to impress upon the Black community about your work?
I mean, I think I was speaking to this a little bit earlier, but I think it's always going to center around. I think LeBron is even saying just doing it ourselves. Like I don't think we're in a day and age where we could just wait for folks to get it right. I think it's important for us to have it right, and hopefully that effect reverberates in the community. But as we know, like Black and brown folks, like you make the trends, you make the energy. Like there's so much positivity to what we create and how we create. And I think it's now just looking into like the parameters around like, IP and legalization and like looking at all the other parts of how we present ourselves and the ideas that we want to kind of come to life and just truly like holding each other accountable to those things. And I know it's, everybody's going to have different opinions, different, you know, places of perspective on it. But I think as long as we know that we're moving forward together in the right way, I think like that's the most important thing. But you really have to do your research and like really be well read on some of these things and topics that are happening. Because like what Abran is saying, the stuff it feels like it's changing daily. Like there's always new updates. It's like, it's just, you really have to stay studious on what's happening. Especially when it involves storytelling, education, reference points. Like these are the things that we live for, and just making sure that, you know, there's a rightful seat at the table, or you go and build your own table. And that's what I guess tonal generative AI is about. And working with empowered AI, and, you know, Abran and the team is just all about like, all right, let's not wait for people to get it right. Let's show them that we can get it right, and hopefully those foster healthy relationships.
Period. I think that is a fantastic note to end on. Before we
Okay.
wrap it up entirely, please let the people know where they can learn more about your work and how they can use Tonal essentially.
Yeah, well, you can find us on www.tonl.co. And we have not launched the generative AI tool yet, but please stay tuned. Follow us on Instagram at TONL for more updates.
Amazing. Well, thank you guys all so much. Really appreciate your time and thank you so much for putting your talents to good use in this way. Really appreciate you.
Good one.
Appreciate you. Thank you so much.